there we are. We're just playing pick, grooving, having a good time in bass world, and today we're going to talk about just getting started with a pick and learning a little bit about the basics of this technique because it's pretty cool. I know that there are plenty of people out there that are like, yeah, I don't need to play bass with a pick, and maybe that's cool. If that's you, do your thing. But Paul McCartney, Carol Kaye, Joe Osborne, Mike Dirnt, all these folks played with the pick, and I like to do that as well. So we're going to get into a couple of the basics in terms of how to hold a pick, how to find the right one for you, a couple of exercises, and if you want to get tab or notation, anything to accompany the lesson in this video, please head over to my Patreon page. You'll find all of that for this lesson and everything else at that for this channel if you go over there. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about finding this pick and bringing it into your life and becoming a bass player that uses one. So what I will say first is the cool thing to do is do the great pick experiment where you take $20, you go to a music store, and you just buy a whole bunch of picks because there is no right or wrong thing. Every player kind of finds what they like, but I really do believe that it's important for you to find a pick that you like the sound of and the feel of. So go to a music store, buy a bunch of them, and see what works best. Now, what I would recommend is a pick with a heavier gauge. So, you know, if you think about like the Fender Light pick, something that is really kind of flimsy, that might be a little bit too light to play bass with. But if you want to find any heavier gauge picks, picks of different materials, they make felt ones, they make rubber ones, they make different plastics. The pick that I've found that I really enjoy using is called the Dava pick. And it's basically made of Delrin, which is like a plastic with like a rubber coating, and I like it because it's got these little grippy things to it. They come in a bunch of fun colors, and it has two different textures and materials, so I can get different tones with it. But primarily, I just enjoy this one because I like the way it sounds against the strings. You know, all different picks with different weights are going to sound slightly different against the strings. So again, finding one that you like the feel of and the tone of is pretty crucial. So once you find a pick that you like, it's great to kind of think about the technique that we're using. Now, when it comes to our plucking hand or our right hand, you know, we have a lot of different techniques: slap and pop, fingerstyle, palm muting, all that. And with a pick technique, the thing that people usually don't get right off the bat is where the motion is coming from. So if you find that you're holding your pick, what I like to do is kind of use my thumb and my index finger and kind of put my thumb at this kind of angle here and my index finger at 90 degrees, kind of hold it like that so that the tip of it is facing towards the strings. That's what I really like to do. I also usually keep my fingers out a little bit. You know, some people will curl them under and play like this. I keep them out just because sometimes it helps with muting and kind of bracing myself against the bass. I can very lightly press against my body of the bass with my pinky or my ring finger, and that helps sometimes with stabilizing my hand. So depending upon how agile the bass line is, I might want to use those fingers for stabilization, or I might want to use that or my palm for muting. So think about just the different parts of your hand and how that's going to approach the string in terms of playing it with the pick or muting the strings that aren't being played. So as we get more into the technique of the pick, the important thing to know is that the motion is not going to come from your elbow, it's really going to come from your wrist. So as you're here playing, if you find that you're doing this kind of motion and you've got like that big arm motion, that's not really what you want. You want to try to keep your elbow stationary, and you want that motion to be coming from your wrist, because that's where you're really going to be able to like be flexible and agile as you're playing with the pick. So getting comfortable with that wrist motion and keeping your elbow in one place is pretty crucial. And then in terms of where to play, you can kind of experiment with this as well, where sometimes you might want to play closer to the neck, sometimes you might want to play down towards the bridge. It's going to be a little twangier if you play down there. I tend to kind of go kind of around the pickup very similarly to where I would play if I were going with a fingerstyle part. So once you get comfortable finding the right pick, getting a little comfortable with the motion and where you're going to be playing, let's start with some exercises. So I think a great place to start is just with some regular G major scale exercises that instead of playing fingerstyle, you play with a pick. Now, when we're playing fingerstyle, the advantage that we have is the two fingers, index and middle. And conventional bass playing wisdom says that we alternate between our index and middle finger as we're playing. And with a pick, because we don't do that, we really want to focus on alternating between downstrokes and upstrokes. So depending upon what you're playing, some songs require downstrokes if you're playing kind of like a hard rock kind of thing. You might want to really dig in with those downstrokes. Other times you might want to go and alternate between down and up. And we want to be able to do both. So in order to practice that, let's just start with the G major scale, and we're going to just play all downstrokes. Now, when you go to practice this, I highly recommend having a metronome handy just to keep yourself accountable for time. And as we play through it, you can go just regular G major scale, all downstrokes. Again, you can kind of see that I'm kind of using my ring finger and or my pinky to kind of stabilize my hand a little bit and mute some of the strings, but I am using just all downstrokes. Now I can do the same exact thing, but go with all upstrokes. Now this might be a little bit awkward, mainly because the momentum that we get is usually a down-up momentum. So if we're doing all upstrokes, it can be a little bit strange. So now we're going to integrate both, and we're going to play down, up, as we play through the scale. Once you get comfortable with that, let's play just eighth notes on every note. So now we're going to do a down up per note. So we'll do down up on G, down up on A, so on and so forth. And again, practicing this with a metronome is really, really good. You want to make sure you're keeping steady time and that you're also just like keeping yourself accountable for time and for playing with nice consistent notes. It is going to be a little bit tricky as you get started, and I think that what you'll find is if you start with a metronome too low, it's going to be really, really difficult. So you want to find like a nice midpoint, maybe even 100 BPM to get started with just like these quarter notes as you're playing with the pick. Now the cool thing about using a G major scale and using that to kind of start your exercises is the fact that you can take this in so many different directions. Like right now we're really just playing like quarter notes or eighth notes on every note, but you can go and you can play triplets, you can play 16th notes, you can do the scale in thirds. There are so many different variations that really can just help you get comfortable with the basics of the pick, so that when you get comfortable playing with that and playing like, oh, maybe you go triplets, you realize you get some momentum going, you get that motion, you get that down up feeling going. That's the thing that's going to take it from being something that feels like an exercise to being more musical, so that when you go to play a bass line, you have a lot of flexibility, you have that technique under your fingers. So again, as you get started with this exercise, please head over to my Patreon page. You can get tab and notation for it. Know that it's great to go and find a music store that has a bunch of different picks, buy them, see which ones you like, which ones work for you, what you like the sound of, what you like the feel of, and then to be mindful of the motion that you have as you're starting with your pick journey. So I hope you dug this lesson. Please check out my website, find some cool stuff over there. Happy practicing, and keep it groovy.